The cruelest joke in the room is usually the one that comes back to haunt everyone. The laughter started before Amelia Carter even touched the invitation. Crystal glasses chimed beneath golden chandeliers. A jazz trio played softly near the grand staircase. Outside, snow drifted across the rolling hills of Connecticut like powdered sugar scattered across a Christmas postcard. Inside the Blackwood estate, however, warmth was reserved for a very select few. Amelia stood quietly beside a decorated fir tree nearly 20 feet tall, holding a silver tray filled with champagne flutes. She had worked at the estate for 3 years. Long enough to know who mattered. Long enough to know she didn't. The guests wore designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. They discussed vacation homes in Aspen, investment portfolios, and charity galas. Most never looked directly at the staff. Amelia had grown used to being invisible. Sometimes she wondered if people saw her at all. Then she heard her name. Amelia! The voice carried across the ballroom. Deep. Confident. Familiar. Ethan Blackwood. The millionaire owner of the estate. Conversations immediately softened. People always listened when Ethan spoke. At 38, he had built one of the largest real estate firms in the Northeast. Magazines called him brilliant. Investors called him fearless. Most people simply called him successful. Amelia carefully set down her tray and approached. Yes, sir? Ethan glanced at her, then toward the group gathered around him. A slow smile appeared on his face. It was the kind of smile that usually meant someone was about to become entertainment. We're hosting our Christmas gala next Friday, he said. And I think you should attend. Several guests exchanged amused looks. Amelia blinked. For a second she thought she had misunderstood him. Staff members didn't attend Blackwood parties. They worked them. Attend? She asked quietly. As a guest, Ethan replied. A few people laughed. Not loudly. Just enough. Just sharp enough. His girlfriend Victoria Hale nearly spilled her drink trying to hide her smile. That's very generous of Mr. Blackwood, she said sweetly. Everyone deserves a little Christmas magic. More laughter followed. Amelia noticed it immediately. The sideways glances. The smirks. The anticipation. She wasn't being welcomed. She was being invited into a joke she hadn't heard yet. Ethan removed a cream-colored envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. Formal attire required, he said. Wouldn't want you showing up in an apron. This time the laughter was impossible to miss. Amelia lowered her eyes briefly. Around her, expensive watches glimmered beneath holiday lights. Diamond earrings sparkled beside carefully practiced smiles. Nobody expected her to accept. Nobody expected her to belong. Yet something surprising happened. Amelia smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not an embarrassed one. A calm smile. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, she said. I'd be honored to come. For the first time, the room grew slightly quieter. Ethan looked almost disappointed. As though the reaction he'd hoped for had failed to arrive. Amelia accepted the envelope and stepped away. Behind her, conversations resumed. The music continued. Glasses clinked. But as she walked toward the service hallway, her fingers tightened around the invitation. Because hidden inside her pocket was another envelope. One she had received that morning. An envelope containing a message that had waited 27 years to be opened. And although nobody in the ballroom knew it yet, Christmas was about to become something very different from a joke. The service hallway felt like a different world from the ballroom. The laughter faded behind heavy oak doors, replaced by the distant hum of heating vents and the soft rattle of dish carts rolling across polished floors. Amelia walked slowly toward the staff quarters, the cream-colored invitation still in one hand and the older envelope pressed safely inside her coat pocket. For a moment she stopped beside a window overlooking the estate grounds. Snow covered the gardens in a blanket of white. Tiny lights wrapped around trees stretched across nearly 5 acres of property. Everything looked perfect from a distance. That was the thing about beautiful places. They rarely showed what happened behind the scenes. Amelia knew every hidden corner of the Blackwood estate. She knew which floorboards creaked, which guest rooms remained empty most of the year, which employees were kind and which treated staff like furniture. 3 years of cleaning, organizing, and quietly solving problems had taught her more about wealthy people than any newspaper article ever could. Most mornings began before sunrise. By 6 o'clock she was already moving through hallways carrying fresh linens while the owners of the estate slept beneath imported Italian blankets. She prepared guest suites, arranged flowers, polished silver, and somehow managed to remember the preferences of dozens of visitors who never remembered hers. One liked coffee heated to exactly 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Another demanded fresh roses every Tuesday regardless of season. Amelia remembered everything. Nobody noticed. At least, that was what they believed. The staff kitchen was nearly empty when she entered. Martha Reynolds sat alone at the long wooden table, reviewing inventory sheets through reading glasses balanced on the edge of her nose. At 62, Martha supervised the household staff with the precision of a military commander and the heart of a grandmother. She glanced up immediately. "You look like someone just handed you a lottery ticket or a lawsuit." Amelia laughed softly. "Maybe both." Martha noticed the invitation. Her eyebrows rose. "You are kidding." "I wish I was." Martha took the envelope and read the embossed lettering. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern. "This was not kindness." "I know." "Then why are you smiling?" Amelia removed her coat and carefully placed it on a chair. "Because they think they already know how the story ends." Martha studied her face for several seconds. Then she nodded slowly. "There it is again." "What?" "That look." Amelia poured herself a cup of tea. "I have no idea what you mean." Martha smiled. "The look that says you know something everybody else does not." Before Amelia could answer, her phone vibrated. One message. No name attached. Just a number she recognized instantly. The text contained only 6 words. "Did you open the envelope yet?" Amelia stared at the screen. Her pulse quickened. The message came from the same person who had arranged the delivery that morning. The same person who had been searching for her for months. The same person connected to questions she had. Amelia's apartment sat above a small bookstore on the edge of town, a quiet place tucked between a bakery and a family-owned hardware store that had survived 3 generations. It was nearly 10:30 when she climbed the narrow staircase carrying a canvas bag and the 2 envelopes that seemed to weigh more with every step. The building creaked softly against the winter wind. Somewhere below, a bell jingled as the bookstore owner locked the front door for the night. Amelia entered her apartment, switched on a lamp beside the couch, and stood perfectly still. The room was simple. A bookshelf. A small kitchen table. A framed photograph of her late mother. Nothing extravagant. Nothing impressive. Yet for the first time in years, the familiar space felt different. The message on her phone echoed in her mind. Everything changes after that. She removed her coat and sat down. The older envelope rested in her hands. Yellowed edges. Heavy paper. No return address. She had stared at it all day without opening it. Part of her feared disappointment. Another part feared the opposite. Because unanswered questions can become comfortable after enough years. Answers are what change lives. Outside, snow tapped lightly against the window. Amelia took a slow breath and broke the seal. Inside she found a folded letter and a small brass key attached to a faded ribbon. The key looked old, polished smooth by time. Her attention shifted immediately to the letter. The handwriting was elegant but slightly uneven, as though written by someone carrying a burden for many years. Dear Amelia, if you are reading this, then the time has finally come for a truth that should have been told long ago. Amelia's heart began to race. She continued reading. The letter explained that her mother had spent decades protecting a secret. A secret involving a business partnership, a promise, and a betrayal that changed several lives. Names appeared throughout the pages. Some meant nothing to Amelia. One stopped her cold. Blackwood. She read the line again. Then a third time. Blackwood. The same family whose estate she cleaned every week. The same family hosting the Christmas gala. The same family whose name appeared on buildings, charities, and magazines across the state. Amelia leaned forward. The letter described two young entrepreneurs who had once started a company together nearly 30 years earlier. One had become wealthy and famous. The other had disappeared from public view after a bitter dispute. The details were incomplete, but one sentence stood out above all the others. Your father never stopped trying to make things right. Amelia froze. Father. The words seemed to pull all the air from the room. She had grown up knowing almost nothing about him. Her mother rarely spoke about the past. Whenever Amelia asked questions, she received gentle smiles and careful answers that revealed very little. She had learned to stop asking. Yet here it was. Proof that the silence had hidden far more than she imagined. Her phone suddenly rang. The unfamiliar number appeared again. This time she answered. Hello? For a moment, only static. Then a man's voice. Older. Calm. Did you read it? Amelia gripped the letter tighter. Who are you? A pause followed. Someone who made a mistake many years ago. How do you know my family? The man exhaled slowly. Because I knew your father. Amelia closed her eyes. Her pulse pounded in her ears. What is happening? Another silence. Then the answer. The Christmas gala is not happening by accident. Amelia sat upright. Every instinct sharpened instantly. What does that mean? It means some people believe they are gathering to celebrate the holidays. They are wrong. Snow continued drifting outside her window. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward 11. Then why are they gathering? She asked. The man's voice lowered. Because after 27 years, the truth is finally coming home. Before Amelia could ask another question, the line disconnected. The apartment fell silent again. She stared at the phone. Then at the brass key resting on the table. Then at the name printed repeatedly throughout the letter. Blackwood. For the first time since arriving at the estate 3 years earlier, Amelia realized she might not have been there by coincidence at all. Amelia barely slept. The letter remained open on the kitchen table long after midnight, while snow continued collecting on the rooftops outside her apartment window. Every few minutes she reread certain lines, hoping they would somehow change. They never did. The names remained the same. The dates remained the same. And most importantly, the connection to the Blackwood family remained impossible to ignore. By 6 o'clock the next morning, she was already dressed and walking toward the bus stop with the brass key secured inside her coat pocket. The winter air carried the sharp scent of pine and chimney smoke. Across town, holiday decorations covered storefront windows while Christmas music drifted from speakers above the sidewalks. Everything looked cheerful. Amelia felt anything but cheerful. Her thoughts kept returning to one detail from the letter. A safety deposit box. According to the final page, the brass key belonged to a box located at First National Trust Bank in Hartford. Inside, the writer claimed, were documents that completed the story. Documents her mother had protected for years. Documents that were supposed to be opened only when the time was right. Amelia arrived at the Blackwood estate shortly before 7:30. The mansion looked exactly as it always did. Massive stone walls. Frost-covered gardens. Luxury vehicles lined along the circular driveway. Yet now every corner seemed different. She found herself studying family portraits hanging in hallways. Looking more carefully at photographs displayed inside offices. Searching for faces mentioned in the letter. Searching for clues she might have missed during 3 years of cleaning rooms no one expected her to truly see. Around noon, Victoria Hale arrived. The sound of her heels echoed across the marble floor before she even entered the main sitting room. Victoria never simply walked into a space. She arrived. 2 assistants followed behind carrying shopping bags from luxury boutiques. Amelia! Victoria called without looking up from her phone. The guest list for the gala increased again. We need another table arrangement. Amelia nodded politely. Of course. Victoria finally glanced up. A slow smile crossed her face. I almost forgot. Have you found a dress yet? Several nearby staff members exchanged uncomfortable looks. Amelia recognized the tone immediately. Victoria enjoyed these conversations. Not yet, Amelia answered. Well, do not wait too long, Victoria replied. Christmas is only a few days away. Her smile widened. I would hate for you to embarrass yourself. Then she laughed lightly and continued walking. One assistant laughed as well. The other looked away. Amelia simply returned to her work. But something interesting happened. For the first time, Victoria's words carried no weight. Because while Victoria worried about dresses and appearances, Amelia now carried questions worth far more than social status. Questions about her family. Questions about the Blackwoods. Questions about why someone had spent 27 years hiding the truth. Late that afternoon, another surprise arrived. Ethan Blackwood entered the library while Amelia organized bookshelves. He rarely visited that room during business hours. For several moments neither spoke. Ethan studied a document in his hand. Amelia continued working. Finally he broke the silence. You accepted the invitation very quickly. Amelia looked up. Should I not have? Ethan folded the paper. Most people would have been intimidated. Maybe you underestimate people. The answer seemed to catch him off guard. A faint smile appeared before disappearing just as quickly. Perhaps. He started toward the door, then stopped. You seem different lately. Amelia felt her pulse quicken. Different how? Ethan considered the question. As if you know something everyone else does not. For a brief moment, the room felt completely still. Amelia remembered Martha saying nearly the exact same words less than 24 hours earlier. Ethan held her gaze. Then a phone call interrupted him. His device vibrated. He glanced at the screen. Whatever he saw immediately changed his expression. The confidence vanished, replaced by concern. Real concern. Without another word, he answered and stepped into the hallway. Amelia watched him leave. Seconds later she heard only 4 words from the other side of the door. 4 words that made her blood run cold. What do you mean missing? Suddenly the gala felt farther away than ever. Because somewhere beyond the Christmas lights, beyond the invitations and expensive decorations, another piece of the mystery had just moved into place. The next morning arrived wrapped in gray clouds and fresh snow. Amelia stood outside First National Trust Bank with the brass key hidden inside her glove and her heart beating faster than it had in years. The building itself looked ordinary. Red brick. Tall windows. A revolving door turning slowly against the cold December wind. Yet according to the letter, something inside could answer questions that had followed her since childhood. She stepped through the entrance. Warm air greeted her immediately. A security guard nodded politely. Christmas decorations hung from every corner of the lobby. Garland wrapped around marble columns. A tree nearly 15 feet tall sparkled beneath white lights. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then she approached the reception desk. 20 minutes later, she found herself seated in a private viewing room while a bank employee placed a small metal box in front of her. The employee smiled professionally and left. The door closed. Silence filled the room. Amelia stared at the box. Then at the brass key. Her hands trembled slightly as she inserted it into the lock. A soft click echoed through the room. She lifted the lid. Inside rested several documents, a leather-bound journal, and an old photograph. Amelia picked up the photograph first. Her breath caught immediately. The image showed 2 young men standing beside a construction site sometime in the early 1990s. One of them was unmistakable. Even decades younger, the resemblance was obvious. He was Ethan Blackwood's father, Charles Blackwood. The second man looked unfamiliar at first. Then Amelia noticed the eyes. The smile. Features she had seen every day in her own mirror. Her throat tightened. The man was her father. She slowly turned the photograph over. A handwritten note covered the back. Partners. Brothers in everything except blood. Summer of 1994. Amelia sat down heavily. The journal suddenly felt much heavier than paper should. She opened it carefully. Page after page revealed the story. Two ambitious young entrepreneurs had built a company together from almost nothing. Charles Blackwood had been the public face. Daniel Carter had been the strategist. According to the journal, both men dreamed of creating something lasting. Something their families could inherit. For years they succeeded. Then everything changed. Amelia continued reading. The entries became darker. Meetings. Disagreements. Missing records. Broken promises. Yet what shocked her most was not the conflict. It was the regret. Every page written by her father carried the same emotion. Disappointment. Not anger. Not hatred. Disappointment. Then she reached the final section. Her pulse accelerated again. A folder labeled Trust Agreement rested beneath the journal. Inside were legal documents bearing signatures from both men. Amelia studied each page carefully. One paragraph stood out immediately. If either partner became unable to fulfill his responsibilities, ownership rights would transfer equally to designated family beneficiaries. Amelia read the sentence twice. Then 3 times. A cold sensation moved through her chest. Family beneficiaries. Her name appeared on the next page. Amelia Carter. The room suddenly felt smaller. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. The implications were impossible to ignore. Whatever had happened between the two families years ago, her connection to the company had never fully disappeared. She was not merely connected to the story. She was part of it. Her phone vibrated. The sudden sound nearly made her jump. One new message. Unknown number. The same sender. The text contained only a single sentence. The gala guest list includes 3 people who already know the truth. Amelia stared at the words. Another message arrived seconds later. One of them is terrified you will discover it before Christmas night. Her stomach tightened. Outside the viewing room, she heard distant footsteps moving through the bank hallway. Inside, the documents rested open before her like pieces of a puzzle finally beginning to form a picture. Somewhere across town, preparations for the gala continued. Decorations were being arranged. Caterers were finalizing menus. Guests were selecting gowns and tuxedos. They believed they were preparing for a celebration. Amelia looked down at the photograph once more. Her father smiled back from a moment frozen nearly 30 years in the past. For the first time, she understood something important. The upcoming gala was never about humiliating a maid. It was about preventing a secret from surviving another Christmas. 3 days remained until Christmas. 3 days until the gala. 3 days until a secret buried for nearly 3 decades would be forced into the light. Amelia returned to the estate carrying copies of every document she had discovered at the bank. The originals remained safely secured, but the information inside them now traveled with her everywhere. She could feel the weight of it even while walking through ordinary routines. Folding linens. Organizing guest rooms. Preparing spaces for visitors who had no idea history was quietly shifting beneath their feet. Yet the strangest part was not the documents. It was Ethan. Over the following days he seemed distracted. Not the usual kind of distraction that came from business deals and investor meetings. Something else. Something personal. Twice Amelia noticed him staring at old family photographs displayed in the library. Once she overheard him cancel a meeting after receiving another mysterious phone call. And every time their paths crossed, he appeared as though he wanted to ask a question but could not quite find the words. Late Thursday afternoon, Amelia entered the West Wing study carrying fresh coffee. Ethan stood alone near the fireplace. Snow drifted beyond the tall windows behind him. A stack of papers covered the desk. Most appeared untouched. "Thank you," he said as she placed the cup beside him. Normally that would have ended the conversation. This time it did not. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Amelia paused. "Of course." Ethan looked toward the fire. Have you ever felt like everyone around you knows part of a story you were never told? The question surprised her. For a moment neither spoke. The crackling fire filled the silence. Yes, Amelia finally answered. Ethan nodded slowly. What did you do? Amelia thought carefully before responding. I stopped waiting for people to tell me the truth. His eyes met hers. Something changed in his expression. Not suspicion. Recognition. As though her answer had struck closer than she intended. Before either could continue, the study door opened. Victoria entered carrying several event folders. Her smile appeared immediately when she saw Amelia. Perfect. I was hoping to find you. Amelia turned politely. How can I help? Victoria placed the folders on the desk. The seating arrangements are finalized. Her tone sounded pleasant. Too pleasant. Since you will be attending as a guest, I thought you might enjoy seeing where you are sitting. Ethan frowned slightly. Victoria ignored it. She opened one of the folders and pointed toward the final page. Amelia glanced down. Her assigned seat sat at the very edge of the ballroom, nearly hidden behind decorative arrangements and service access doors. Far away from investors, executives, and prominent guests. Far away from anyone important. Victoria smiled brightly. I wanted you to feel comfortable. The room became very quiet. Ethan studied the chart. His jaw tightened slightly. Move her table. Victoria blinked. Excuse me? Move it, Ethan repeated. That location makes no sense. For the first time all week, Victoria looked genuinely unsettled. I was only trying to help. Then help by fixing it. Several seconds passed. Then Victoria forced another smile and gathered the folders. Of course. She left the room moments later. The door closed behind her. Ethan looked frustrated. Amelia looked amused. Unexpectedly, she laughed. A small laugh. Soft but genuine. Ethan stared at her. What is funny? Nothing. It clearly was something. Amelia shook her head. People work very hard protecting positions they think matter. Ethan considered that statement for several seconds. Then his phone vibrated. Another message. His face immediately lost all color. He opened it. Read it once. Then again. Amelia saw concern replace every other emotion. What happened? She asked quietly. Ethan looked up. For the first time since she had known him, he appeared genuinely shaken. Someone just sent me a copy of a partnership agreement from 1994. Amelia's pulse stopped for a fraction of a second. Ethan continued staring at the screen. And according to this document, everything my family believes about our company might be wrong. The words hung in the air long after Ethan stopped speaking. The fire continued crackling inside the study fireplace, but neither of them seemed to hear it anymore. Amelia forced herself to remain calm. Where did the document come from? She asked. Ethan looked down at his phone again. There is no sender information. His voice sounded distant. Just scanned pages and a note. What note? Ethan hesitated. Then he read the message aloud. Ask your father what happened to Daniel Carter. Amelia felt her heartbeat quicken. Hearing her father's name spoken inside the Blackwood estate felt surreal. For a brief moment she wondered whether Ethan noticed her reaction. If he did, he gave no sign. His attention remained fixed on the screen. Do you know who Daniel Carter is? He asked. Amelia carefully shook her head. Should I? Ethan stared toward the snowy landscape beyond the windows. I am beginning to think I should have known. The conversation ended when another staff member entered the study. Yet the question remained with both of them. By evening, the atmosphere throughout the estate had changed. Employees whispered in hallways. Executives arrived unexpectedly. Several meetings were moved behind closed doors. Even Victoria seemed unusually tense. She spent most of the afternoon making phone calls and checking messages with growing frustration. Something was happening. Amelia could feel it. The next day arrived with fresh snowfall and a steady stream of deliveries for the gala. Trucks unloaded decorations. Florists carried arrangements through the front entrance. Catering staff prepared for hundreds of guests. The entire estate transformed into a winter spectacle. Crystal ornaments reflected thousands of tiny lights. Evergreen garlands wrapped around staircases. A massive Christmas tree dominated the ballroom beneath a ceiling painted with gold accents and winter scenes. It should have felt magical. Instead, it felt like a stage waiting for the curtain to rise. Shortly after lunch, Amelia received another message from the unknown number. It contained an address and a simple instruction. Come alone. 2:00. Bring the journal. Against every instinct telling her otherwise, she went. The address led to a small office building on the outskirts of Hartford. Nothing about it appeared remarkable. A modest brick structure. Frost-covered windows. A nearly empty parking lot. Inside, a receptionist directed her to the third floor. Amelia stepped into a private conference room and stopped immediately. An elderly man stood beside the window overlooking the city. Silver hair. Dark overcoat. Sharp blue eyes that seemed to carry decades of unfinished conversations. He turned slowly when she entered. For several seconds neither spoke. Then the man smiled sadly. You look exactly like your father. Amelia's throat tightened. Who are you? The man gestured toward a chair. My name is Henry Whitmore. The name meant nothing to her. He seemed to expect that. I was your father's attorney. Amelia sat down slowly. Henry placed several folders on the table. And I have been waiting 27 years to keep a promise. He opened one folder and slid a photograph toward her. It showed her father standing beside Charles Blackwood. Younger. Smiling. Proud. Another photograph followed. Then another. Business meetings. Groundbreaking ceremonies. Holiday parties. Two families who once appeared inseparable. What happened? Amelia asked quietly. Henry looked away. Greed happened. Fear happened. Pride happened. His voice softened. And then good people stopped talking when they should have spoken. He reached into his briefcase and removed one final document. Unlike the others, this one carried multiple signatures and official seals. Your father never wanted revenge, Henry said. That is the part nobody understands. Amelia looked down at the page. Her eyes widened immediately. The document established a trust. Not for money. Not for property. For voting control. Control over decisions affecting the original company both men had built. Her name appeared on the final line. Sole designated successor. Amelia stared at the paper in disbelief. Henry nodded slowly. By law, you already possess authority that some very powerful people desperately hope you never discover. Outside, church bells echoed somewhere across the city. Christmas Eve had arrived. And for the first time, Amelia understood why certain people were afraid of the truth reaching the ballroom tomorrow night. Christmas night arrived beneath a sky filled with slow drifting snow and a moon bright enough to turn the entire Blackwood estate silver. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway. Valets hurried through the cold. Camera flashes sparkled near the entrance as prominent business leaders, politicians, philanthropists, and socialites stepped onto the red carpet. Inside, the ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers and thousands of white lights woven through towering evergreen trees. A string quartet performed holiday classics from a raised platform while servers carried silver trays through the crowd. Everything appeared flawless. Everything appeared under control. Yet beneath the polished surface, tension moved through the room like an invisible current. Ethan felt it. He stood near the grand staircase greeting guests, but his attention kept drifting toward the entrance. The partnership agreement remained fresh in his mind. The questions refused to leave. Across the ballroom, Victoria moved confidently from group to group, smiling for photographs and accepting compliments about the event. She looked perfectly composed. Only the occasional glance toward the entrance revealed her growing anxiety. More than once she checked her phone. More than once she seemed disappointed by the absence of a message she expected to receive. 7:30 arrived. Then 8 o'clock. Guests filled every corner of the ballroom. Conversations grew louder. Laughter echoed beneath the vaulted ceiling. Yet one seat remained empty. Amelia's seat. Victoria finally relaxed. Perhaps she had been right all along. Perhaps the invitation had been too much. Perhaps the maid had chosen not to attend after all. Then the music stopped. It happened gradually. First a few conversations faded. Then several guests turned toward the entrance. Then dozens. The massive ballroom doors had opened. Snow swirled briefly through the doorway before disappearing into the warmth. Amelia Carter stepped inside. Silence followed. Not complete silence. The kind that happens when hundreds of people suddenly forget what they were saying. Her gown was elegant rather than extravagant. Deep emerald green. Timeless. Refined. She wore no excessive jewelry. No dramatic display of wealth. Yet she carried herself with a confidence that transformed everything. The woman many people thought they knew seemed gone. In her place stood someone entirely different. Not because of the dress. Because of the certainty in her eyes. Ethan stared. For several seconds he genuinely did not recognize her. Around him, guests whispered quietly. Several influential investors exchanged surprised looks. A retired senator standing near the front immediately stepped forward. Then a former governor followed. Then the chairman of a major foundation. One after another, prominent figures crossed the ballroom toward Amelia. Not out of curiosity. Out of respect. Ethan noticed it instantly. So did Victoria. The reactions made no sense. Amelia greeted each person calmly. Some shook her hand. Others embraced her warmly. A few appeared genuinely relieved to see her. Victoria's confidence vanished. "What is happening?" she whispered. Nobody answered. At that moment another figure entered the ballroom. Henry Whitmore. The elderly attorney moved carefully through the crowd carrying a leather portfolio beneath one arm. Conversation stopped again. Several older guests recognized him immediately. Expressions changed. Smiles disappeared. Memories returned. Henry reached Amelia and nodded respectfully. Then he handed her the portfolio. The gesture seemed simple. Yet it carried enormous weight. Ethan watched every second. Something inside him already knew this was the moment everything changed. Across the room, Victoria suddenly looked pale. She had finally recognized Henry. More importantly, she recognized what his presence meant. Amelia accepted the portfolio and looked across the ballroom. Her gaze moved past politicians, executives, investors, and celebrities before settling on Ethan. Neither spoke. Yet the distance between them suddenly felt much smaller than the years of secrets separating their families. Near the back of the ballroom, a crystal glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered harmlessly against the floor. The sound echoed through the silence like a starting bell. Because for the first time in 27 years, every person connected to the truth was finally standing in the same room. Amelia stepped forward as hundreds of eyes followed her across the ballroom. The orchestra remained silent. Even the servers had stopped moving. Snow drifted beyond the towering windows while the glow of Christmas lights reflected across polished marble floors. For years she had walked through these rooms unnoticed. Tonight, nobody could look away. Henry Whitmore opened the leather portfolio and removed a single document. He handed it to Amelia, then quietly stepped aside. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. When she finally spoke, the calmness in her tone seemed to command more attention than any speech ever could. "My father believed that character mattered more than wealth," she said. "He believed promises mattered. He believed partnerships mattered. Most of all, he believed that truth eventually finds its way home." The room remained perfectly still. Amelia held up the photograph of Daniel Carter and Charles Blackwood standing together beside their first construction project nearly 3 decades earlier. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Many recognized the image immediately. Some older guests lowered their eyes. Others exchanged uncomfortable glances. Amelia continued. This company was built by two families, not one. Across the ballroom, Ethan felt every word land with unexpected force. He had spent days reviewing documents, asking questions, and uncovering pieces of a story nobody had fully explained. Yet hearing it spoken aloud felt different. Real. Human. Personal. Amelia carefully placed the photograph on a nearby table. My father never asked for revenge. He never wanted anyone destroyed. What he wanted was honesty. She opened the journal and read a short passage written in Daniel Carter's own handwriting. It described friendship, shared dreams, gratitude, hope for future generations. Not a single line contained bitterness. When she finished reading, silence filled the room once again. Several guests looked visibly emotional. Henry then stepped forward. I served as legal counsel for both families, he announced, and I can confirm that these records are authentic. A wave of whispers moved through the crowd. The confirmation changed everything. Victoria suddenly stood. This is ridiculous. Her voice sounded sharper than intended. Heads turned immediately. A Christmas gala is not a courtroom. Nobody responded. Victoria glanced around, clearly expecting support. None came. The room had already shifted away from her. She looked toward Ethan. Say something. Ethan slowly stepped forward. For a moment, everyone waited. Then he did something nobody expected. He turned toward Amelia. I owe you an apology. The words seemed to surprise him almost as much as everyone else. Not because of the documents. Not because of the company. He paused. Because I never bothered to learn who you were. The honesty of the statement carried through the ballroom. Amelia studied him quietly. Ethan continued. I invited you here believing I understood your place in this story. He looked around the room. The truth is, I never understood the story at all. No one laughed. No one interrupted. For perhaps the first time in his life, Ethan Blackwood stood before a crowd without hiding behind confidence or status. Amelia smiled softly. Not a triumphant smile. Not a victorious one. Simply a smile of understanding. Most people see what they expect to see, she replied. That does not make them evil. It just makes them wrong. Several guests nodded. Others lowered their heads. The lesson felt larger than the company itself. Henry then announced that the trust documents and voting authority would be formally recognized according to the original agreements. Yet Amelia surprised everyone again. She declined to make a dramatic claim. She declined to demand power. She declined to seek control. Instead, she requested transparency, accountability, and a renewed partnership honoring both families. The simplicity of the decision left the room speechless. Outside, church bells began ringing in the distance. Christmas had officially arrived. Guests slowly applauded. Then more joined. Soon the entire ballroom echoed with applause. Not for wealth. Not for status. For dignity. As the evening drew to a close, Amelia stepped outside beneath the falling snow. Ethan followed several moments later. Neither spoke immediately. They simply watched the snowflakes drift beneath the estate lights. Finally Ethan asked, After everything, what do you plan to do now? Amelia looked toward the night sky. The same thing I always planned to do. And what is that? She smiled. Live a life that does not depend on other people knowing my worth. Ethan watched her walk away through the snow-covered path. For the first time, he understood something his money had never taught him. Some people spend their entire lives searching for class, influence, and importance, only to discover that true value was standing quietly beside them all along.